Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry, send me you time. Arsenal. Come on, you gunners. Arsenal. Chronicles of a Gooner.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to a bonus episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Simiyu. We will be getting a podcast out to you tomorrow, that being Tuesday. I've got an appointment first thing in the morning, so that podcast might be with you slightly later in the day. And therefore, I figured, seeing as I'm at home, seeing as the kids are driving me crazy, they won't stop arguing with one another, the house is a madhouse, it's all crazy, I thought, you know what? I'll take a stroll down to the man cave and we'll record a bonus episode because there's a fair bit of news to get into. There's a number of reports that have come out today that I think are quite interesting. Some update with regards to Ben White. We've got a little bit of an update on Big Gabby. And we're also going to react to Sam Dean's report about what went down in the changing room after that performance against Wolverhampton Wanderers. I had to check myself when I said that because I've almost kind of talked myself into feeling as though over the last few days that we lost to Wolves or we dropped points, and we didn't. The performance was bad, yes, as we've already covered on 2 shows now. But we won the game. We did win the game. And I suppose ultimately that's all that matters. Look, I want to just touch on some of the response to the episode that we put out earlier in the day where we focused on Victor Gyökeres. I tried to do it from the right angle, if that makes sense. I tried to discuss what I think we need from Victor Gyökeres in a constructive way, rather than it being a Gyökeres can't do this, can't do that, won't do this, won't do that. I tried not to go down that road, but when you feel as frustrated as I do with regards to something in our team that is just not working and clicking at the moment, there is the risk and there is a danger that maybe, I didn't quite succeed in making sure that was the tone. But I found the responses to my Gyökeres comments really, really interesting, more so on the social media platforms where there is a clip of me talking about how, as I said on that pod, I want to see more sophisticated movement from Gyökeres. I need him to be a little bit more explosive. It's been interesting because there's a lot of people that agree, but there's also a lot of people that disagree, and that's also fine. There seems to be 2 camps with this. There's the camp of people that are looking at this and saying, we need more from Victor Gyökeres. We expected more. We haven't quite seen it. He's got to improve. He's got to fix up. And when I say there's 2 camps, I'm only looking at the sensible people, right? I'm not going to bother with the extremist opinions that you get whenever it comes to any subject involving football, or in particular the Arsenal, because you get one extreme, you get the other extreme, and then you get a crowd of people in the middle. And I'm talking about the people in the middle, but even those guys can kind of be divided into 2 at the minute, because as I say, there's a group that think need to see more from Victor Gyökeres. We need to see more from Victor Gyökeres if he's going to succeed at Arsenal. And then there's a group of people that sort of I've found to be really defensive of Victor Gyökeres, who say things like he has made X amount of runs this season without the ball coming to him, without the ball arriving, without the player in possession at that time, spotting the run quick enough and then executing the pass. And I think there is some validity in that argument, right? I think this is a nuanced conversation. And I promise this is going to be the last thing that we say on it. But I just wanted to clarify and clear up my position on this, because I feel like, obviously, when you put a clip on social media, that clip is going to spread and people are going to assume that you haven't covered the entire subject in the way that you should. And instead, you're sort of really strongly in one camp or the other. And I'm not. I think 2 things can be true at the same time. As I say, I've had loads of responses to that segment we did earlier on. In my opinion, he needs to be sharper. He needs to be more explosive in his runs, and he needs to vary them up a bit. That kind of movement that I've just described, sharp, explosive, with variety to it, that convinces those around you to play the killer pass. So if you are saying that The reason Victor Gyökeres has struggled at Arsenal to date is because he is not getting the passes and the passes aren't coming to him. Then my next question would be, why aren't those passes coming to him? Because as a midfielder or a winger, when you're in possession and you're looking up and you're trying to open a team up, you've got to believe that the option you are taking, the option you are choosing in terms of how you distribute the ball, is going to be the best option. Right now, are his teammates convinced that he's going to convert it into something? Are they convinced that if they put a ball in a channel, that Victor Gyökeres is A, going to get there first, and B, if he does have the strength to hold off the opposition? Because all of these things, and I don't know the answer to these questions, but all of these things are factors in the decision-making process of our wingers and midfielders when they are choosing to or not to play Victor Gyökeres in. Having said all of that, you can make the case that those around him are failing to spot some of the runs and execute the passes. The issue for me is multifaceted, just like most things. But of course, there's no space for any nuanced conversation because it's 2025, and that goes for pretty much everything, doesn't it? But yeah, if you want my full thoughts on the Victor Gyökeres conversation and discussion, go back to the pod that we released earlier today for some in-depth analysis on the big Swede. Okay, let's start, shall we? Before we get into the news, and we're going to cover off a few bits of news, I just want to take some of you guys' comments and thoughts from the live chat. The robots will eat you, say, Harry, just admit it. Gyökeres has insufficient technical ability to thrive here, and most of us knew it even before he was signed. Rumble says, I didn't agree with the comment, bro. You can't give leeway to your favorites. Everyone should get fair criticism. Gel says, if Victor Gyökeres doesn't improve, he has to be dropped. And in January, if we want to win anything this season, no matter how difficult and expensive, we have to get a replacement. Interesting. Wandering Minstrel says, very well clarified, Harry. Very balanced. Thank you. What else have I got here? AFC Cape Town says, disagree. He's been making runs all season and they just ignore him and decide to play tiki-taka on the right. Theo Johnson says, since Arteta joined, his track record with strikers forwards is terrible. I don't know. He broke Arsenal's goal-scoring record in the Premier League 2 consecutive seasons. So the idea that Mikel Arteta can't coach a team to attack is just wrong. It's factually wrong. I'm not having that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm not having that. Okay, let's get into the news and maybe we'll revisit this a little bit later on, depending on what the Q&A looks like at the end of the episode. We've heard today that Ben White will be out for at least a month. And this was reported initially, at least as far as I could see, by Charlie Wyatt from The Sun and Sammy Mockbell from the BBC. It looked like a hamstring injury. It didn't look good when he came off. We all thought 3-4 weeks probably, and that's exactly what it's going to be. I think with Ben White, I'm really frustrated by this. Really frustrated by this because we talked about it, didn't we? In the build up to the game the other night, we talked about it and we said, like, he's just come in. He's been out in the cold for such a long time. He's had to play 3 consecutive games, starting games. I think this was his 4th start, wasn't it, in a row? And, there is that massive risk. There is that huge risk that Ben White gets pushed too hard as a result. Now, I said this at the time, but I'll say it again just for clarity. Had William Saliba not been available, had Jurrien Timber not been available, I don't think I would be sitting here now on Monday criticizing the decision to play Ben White. I would have said it was a gamble that we had to take due to the lack of alternative options. That's what I would have said had those guys still been unavailable. The fact that those 2 were back and available should have given Mikel Arteta the confidence or the nudge that he needed to go, I can get away with not playing Ben White in this game, in my personal opinion. Okay, we've talked so much over the last 2-3 seasons about rotten luck when it comes to injuries. And have we had our fair share of rotten and bad luck with regards to player injuries? Of course we have. Nobody's going to deny that. Of course we have. But it's the ones that are presentable that really wind me up, basically. You know, you think about it. We've got Ben White there. We've had him out in the cold for such a long time. We ran Yuri and Timber into the ground last season because of Ben White's stop and start campaign. So much so that Timber had to have a surgery. We get Timber back. Again, Ben White's not available. Then he becomes available. He has a few little setbacks. He's sort of in and out again of the picture. Then he's in the picture for quite a while, but doesn't get any game time. So we didn't work to kind of ease him back in and get him into the shape that meant he might be a little bit more robust and a little bit more ready for a stint of games like the one he's just had to play. And bang, half an hour into Saturday night's game, we lose him. This one was preventable for me. And I think you need to hold the guys to account, not for the injury specifically, but for the way that Ben White has been managed, which has then increased the probability of this injury happening. Like, it's not like Mikel Arteta like grabbed his hamstring and gave it a tug. Like, that's not what happened, obviously. But I think some of the decisions we've made around Ben White in recent times have increased, at the very least, increased the risk. And now we're going to be without him for a while, which is incredibly frustrating. In that update from Sammy Mockbell, he also touches on Gabriel, Big Gabby Magalhaes. Few people have asked me over the last few days, what's the deal with him? When's he going to be back? How close is he to returning? Honestly, I don't know. So I'm going to go by what Sammy Mockbell's reported. I did see something online earlier. I think it was from AFC Camden, a big Twitter account, who said that the hope was that he'd be back for Everton at the weekend, but maybe that game's just come a little bit too soon for him. Sammy Mockbell seems to think that Gabriel will not be available until at least the end of the year. Now, let me just say this, okay? Let me just say this. We need Gabriel. He's so bloody important. He gives us that defensive stability that means we can win games 1-0. That means even when we're not expansive and we're struggling to break people down, we don't need to create huge margins to win football matches, because he brings something to the defense. He also brings something to us offensively as well, which I think is clear and apparent for everybody to see. He's a leader. He's one of the players, I feel, that makes sure that the standards are upheld. And that's interesting, because we're going to come on to talk about their fogging standards in a bit. But there is a massive Gabriel-shaped hole in our team right now. And it's not to say that Nkapie hasn't done all right, or that Timber hasn't done okay-ish when he's played at centre-back, or that others can't either. But there's no Gabriel, and there's no Mosquera, and there's been no Saliba. And we have really, really felt his absence big time. And while I'm desperate to see him back, it's really important that we don't rush him. It's really important that we don't push him too hard. And in the past, I've looked at our squad. I've watched players be run into the ground. And I've said, well, we don't have the squad to make the changes. And then because we don't have the squad to make the changes, we can't exactly risk the level dropping off, which means that we're overusing players and we're pushing players too hard. And then we'd lose players and we'd say, well, there's no one to come in and replace them. Now our season's going to go to shit. That's kind of where we were at recently as a football club. But we've all talked so much about the strength in depth, the quality within the group, the squad, etc., etc. That makes things like what we did the other night with Ben White, pushing him too hard, okay? That makes those things for me unforgivable. That makes it so there is no excuse for those mishaps and those mistakes. Do you get what I'm saying? If I thought that, we had no choice, again, as I say it again, if there was no Timber and there was no Saliba, absolutely you got to play Ben White, and that is what it is. And if he gets injured, you go, bloody hell, our luck is really shit. But this was preventable, the Ben White thing. And the point I'm trying to make, and obviously we moved on to Gabriel, but the point I'm trying to make is that you cannot take any risks with Gabriel. You bring Gabriel back when Gabriel is right to come back, and you kind of have to protect the player from himself, because he is the type, I'm sure, that will be desperate to get back in the picture, desperate to get back in the side. He'll see that defensively we're not quite the same, and he'd love to get back in there, I'm sure, and make that difference. But sometimes you have to protect the player from themselves. And I think, I said it at the start of the season, I felt like the recruitment and some of the decisions we were making earlier on in the season were decisions made from a place of trauma, in that we'd experienced the trauma of losing all these players at the same time and not really knowing how to cope, and then essentially watching our season spiral out of control. I thought that contributed to the approach in the summer. I also thought management at the start of the season seemed to show signs of a lesson being learned, and I know the injuries are there and they're mounting up and all the rest of it, but the Ben White thing just made me question whether we have actually learned our lesson on that. So really, really frustrating. Look, short pause. When we come back, we're going to react to Sam Dean's story in the Telegraph, which I think is an interesting one, and we'll take a few of your questions to round off the show. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the Chronicles of Guna. Goodbye. No, don't go. No, what I'm talking about. Not goodbye. Back in a minute.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. Like and subscribe. You are listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner with me, Harry Simiyu. Sam Dean has written a piece in the Telegraph in which he talks about the fact that the Arsenal players were furious after the Wolverhampton Wanderers game. He says that it was clear to see some of the frustrations on the pitch post-match. He says that Rice and Odegaard expressed their frustrations in the dressing room, and there was a collective agreement that Arsenal had fallen short of their usual standards. I said I'm not going to harp on about the performance on Saturday night. I'm really trying not to, but I keep ending up back there. That performance was poor. Really, really, really poor. And so, you can analyze it. We've done that. We've picked it apart. Let's not go down that road again. But I'm actually quite pleased to be reading this. I'm quite pleased to see that two of our senior players, one who's the captain and one who most people think probably should be the captain instead, based on sort of some of the conversations I've had over the last year or so with Arsenal fans. Both of those guys have gone in the dressing room and expressed their frustrations and made it clear that what happened out there was not acceptable. And rather than celebrating wildly in the dressing room after the game and feeling as though it's going to be our year and all the rest of it, I think it's right that there was an honest and probably at times brutal discussion about the level. Mikel Arteta came out to do the interviews after the game, and he was clearly frustrated, clearly very, very angry, which kind of plays into this story and makes it make sense, I suppose. And there was a collective agreement that the Arsenal had fallen short of the standards required. Absolutely. That's what I want to see. That's what I want to hear. That's what I want to read. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in there. But this tells me that, there isn't this arrogance. There isn't this, oh, well, we're untouchable because we played like shit. We hardly bothered. Some of us couldn't be bothered. Some of us were not anywhere near our best. Some of us didn't apply ourselves the way we should have. But do you know what? We won, so it don't matter. Like, I'm glad that arrogance is not there. I'm glad that what's happened in recent years has shaped these guys into feeling like if they let poor form and bad habits creeping in, things can really, really get away from them quickly. You can't allow that to creep in. The standards have to be maintained at all times. And so I was really, really pleased to read that, I've got to say. Go and check out the full story. Sam Dean, the one who brought it to us, brilliant story. Go over and have a look at that on the Telegraph. Right, let's take a short dive, shall we, into a short... What's a short dive? What am I talking about? Let's have a look at what's being said in the live chat. Is someone trying to defend our injury record in the chat? Is that what I'm reading? There we go. Yep, Jude. I thought it'd be you. You are leaning into this point I keep making. Your argument for resting White makes sense in your head. Do you then think the people who work and interact with White and White himself do not know his body and its limits as well as you? I keep advising you to stop making your assumptions, making your assumption the highest probability for decisions or events at Arsenal. I don't quite understand why every show we get this stuff coming back at me. Like, I'm not really sure where it comes from. My job, my literal job, okay, I've got 2 jobs, okay? One, I'm a football commentator and I commentate and call games. That's what I do. And number 2, I'm a podcaster. What kind of podcast would this be if I did not share my views and my opinions? What would you have me do? Come on the morning after we just about scrape past Wolverhampton Wanderers and say, Arsenal 2, Wolverhampton Wanderers 1. End of podcast. Like, is that what you want me to do? I don't understand. My opinion was going into the game. And anybody that listened to the show that we did going into the game will know that I raised this concern. This is not me jumping on a bandwagon to be popular. Okay. Going into that game, I said the fact that Ben White might be about to start his 4th game in a row, having missed so much football, having played so little in the season so far, that concerns me. That worries me, because over the course of the last year and a half, he's had lots and lots of injury problems. Lots of injury problems. I never at any point claimed to be more in the know than the medical people, but it's basic common sense to put the point forward that if you've played that little football, with every game you start without having a breather, when they're every 3 days at that intensity, doing what Ben White's doing, getting up and down that touchline, the probability of you getting injured without having that break and that rest, the probability increases. The probability of you suffering a muscular injury, it increases. That is scientific, knowledge. That is not something that I've just made up for my agenda, as people like to put it. And I'm conscious of spending too much time arguing with comments here. But my point is that at the end of the day, that felt avoidable to me. That felt avoidable to me. And if something feels avoidable to me, I'm going to say it. I've not said, sack Mikel or sack the doctor or sack all the physios, sack the guy that gave him his last massage because he must have done a really bad job because Ben White went out and got injured. All of that, I'll leave that to other people to do that, because that is not me. Okay. I'm not after anyone. I'm not trying to, criticize anyone. No, my point here is that the risk of him picking up this type of injury was increasing with every game that he started and played most of the game, because he'd been out for so long and he barely played up until that point. And that is, I think most medical professionals would agree with that. Jid says, then nothing wrong with the view. I've spoken about presenting your opinions as fact because you believe your theory is what makes most sense. It's not always the case. You sometimes present your opinions as fact. That's the point I'm making. I don't present my opinions as fact. I believe in my opinions and I talk about my opinions with conviction. If I didn't, you would question whether I actually believe what I'm saying, in which case you would say that I'm insincere and you would say that I'm just saying things for effect. I say what I believe. Now, am I always right? No, as has been proven many, many times. But am I always wrong? No, I'm not always wrong either. So, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. Those are my opinions. I don't present them as fact. I present them with conviction and with 100% backing because they are legitimately my opinions. And that's it. That's it. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. Salah Houdin, and also Jude, I'm waiting for you to come on the pod, by the way. I'm waiting for us to have this discussion because you still haven't confirmed to me when you'll be available for us to have that conversation, because there's a lot of, and I hope once we have that conversation, like all this claiming I've got agendas and all the rest of it, we can just put it to bed, because honestly, like, you couldn't have got me any more wrong if you tried. Salah Hadin says, is the manager to blame for how the Arsenal attack hasn't improved? We still have the same issues in attack like a few years ago. Thoughts? We still haven't banged in attack like we did in the defense. Well, I made a point a little bit earlier on in the show that our defense, our goal scoring record in terms of hitting the highest numbers we have in the Premier League, we broke it twice over the last 4 years under Mikel Arteta. So the idea that the attack is regressing or is terrible is wrong. I think we're just facing different things nowadays and different problems. And and we're struggling a little bit with them. I do feel like, at times I can look at this team and I can say maybe they're overcoached a little bit. Maybe there are certain freedoms that Arsene Wenger perhaps used to afford to his attackers that maybe Mikel Arteta doesn't, in terms of what they do going the other way. And then that reduces their ability to influence the game in the way that we want them to. I don't dispute that. I think it's all about balance. And I think that, if you want us to become this, fast-paced, relentless attacking side, which we have seen us show ourselves to be at points, but not consistently enough. I agree with that. But if you want that, that comes at a cost. And the compromise is then you can't be as well structured. Therefore, you won't be as good defensively. So, yeah, let's see what's going to happen. But I'm not going to say that the Arsenal. Look, all right, maybe you can say the attack hasn't improved, but I think some of that's on the players as well. Like everybody was. I'll give you a great example. Everybody was buzzing when I got that news that Victor Gyökeres was going through. I was on top of the world. I've watched him now for a few months and doesn't really excite me. So, it goes to show that we can think we're doing the right things, and sometimes in time, maybe they show themselves not to be. Not that I'm ruling the guy out of turning it around and getting back on track and showing everybody what he can do, proving people like me and others wrong. But, sometimes you can be really excited for something and it doesn't quite live up to the billing, in which case, it's easy with hindsight to say that was wrong. But yeah. What else have we got? Just having a look at what's being said in the chat. There's a lot of back and forward about this injury chat. So you know what? I think I'm going to wrap it up. And jump in on the Highbury squad with Sophie and Tom at 7. So in a few minutes time, UK time. So I'm going to love you and leave you. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really, really do appreciate the love and support as always. Remember, there's a special offer on our Patreon at the moment, 50% off your first month if you sign up before the 24th of December. So Christmas Eve is the cutoff there. So go over and check it out. The link is in the description. You'll get access to additional content. You get access to all our pods ad-free. And if you want to have a pop at me on Patreon, you can do it. And I'll actually read those. I'll see you all very, very soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day, wonderful evening. And we'll be back with the next pod with a focus on Eberici Eze. All the best. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful time. All the best. Goodbye.
Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe. Chronicles of a Gooner. Harry Simi, you time. Come on, you gunners.